I'm State Senator George Latimer. We're having a conversation today with Westchester County Legislator Catherine Parker, who represents the 7th Legislative District that includes all of Larchmont and Mamaroneck. So everyone here in the LMC-TV viewing area will be voting in November in this race. Catherine, welcome to the air, and welcome back to Larchmont and Mamaroneck again.
Yes, I'm very happy to be here with you.
Well, you're a familiar face around these parts, but sometimes because of governmental responsibilities, people may not know all of the background, the things that you're involved in, and you really began everything through your business experience. So why don't we start with you telling a little bit about your business and how that got you into public service.
Sure, and I was so young way back then.
Still
when in 1996 actually was when I opened my store in Rye. It's so funny, back then I remember being told of community with mom and pop shops, and at the time I was young and single and didn't imagine that one day I in fact would become the mom of the mom and pop store. But 19 years later my business is still going strong. When I had first opened, I noticed that while there was a chamber of commerce, it wasn't a very active chamber, and it seemed like there were issues in the community that we all shared, all the businesses in town. And so a few people had come to me and said, we should do something, and wanted to see if I would get involved with the Chamber of Commerce. And so I helped to relaunch that. And that I think is really where I started to get involved in the community as a business owner, and then from there it sort of just grew. The mayor at the time had asked me if I would get involved with some governmental committees, beautification committees, and we did a parking study, worked on all sorts of projects. And so that's how people got to know and see how I worked, and I helped to really formulate an organization where it was seen as the voice for the business district within the community.
And in a lot of ways, these downtown business district areas really define the community for people not only who live here, but those who are thinking of coming here. So as you've represented Larchmont and Mamaroneck, do you see commonality between that experience and your Rye business experience?
Absolutely. And I think Mamaroneck and Larchmont are very fortunate. They do have organizations. The Mamaroneck Chamber of Commerce is very, very active. There's new leadership with the Larchmont Chamber of Commerce. They've been doing really good things. So I absolutely see commonalities, and I've been very interested in seeing how that's been evolving here within Larchmont and Mamaroneck.
Now, I know it's sort of a logical next step. You've been involved before you bought, you and your husband bought your private home. You were active in the co-op complex that you were in. You got it active in the Rye Arts Center. You're an active PTA mom. So tell us a little bit about the non-governmental, non-business side of your life.
Yeah, absolutely. My husband will tell you that after I talk about these organizations, where does what gets left behind? It's probably my house could look a little bit cleaner. You can't do everything. That is true. But yes, I was president of my co-op board when we lived in an apartment, and it was 123 units, so it was a fairly big complex. I used to feel a little bit like it was almost like a small little city within Rye. Then in 1998, I was asked to join the board of the Rye Arts Center, which is really a great organization, and for the Sound Shore, it really has people that come from Mamaroneck and Larchmont, Portchester, Rye Brook, Harrison, even Connecticut come to Rye for the Rye Arts Center. And I'm still actively involved. I'm on their advisory board. The arts has always been a passion of mine. It was my minor in college, so I like to continue with that. And right now, actually, as county legislator, I am ex officio to Arts Westchester. I also, having children, my daughter is in high school and my son is in elementary school. And, all the way through, we in the community, you always want to sort of help where you can. And so right now, for my son's elementary school, because of my work on environmental issues, I also volunteer with the environmental committee. And my daughter's, the high school PTO, I think, functions a little bit differently in that there are fewer committees, but I am on what's called the caring committee. So when a family's in crisis, you know, we provide some support, whether it's cooked meals or something. And so I've always felt that it's important to be involved, and we each help each other. And I guess my mom was the one that really showed, you know, taught by example. And so, and she always stressed that we are a community. We're not separate and apart and isolated. We help one another.
Well, I think it's particularly notable that the things you've done in one community have parallel structures in other communities. We just finished, within the last week of our taping this, Larchmont Day Street Festival, where the arts in Constitution Park was a major part of what happened in Larchmont. In Mamaroneck Village, the Council on the Arts have done a number of different things and continue to have plans throughout the course of time. And of course, the PTAs are as active in Chatsworth and Central and Murray and as they are in you know, the other communities in Rhinebeck as well as Rice City. So it's good that you've got each of those kinds of things. Obviously, you're here in a governmental context. You've served 2 years in the county legislature. Before we go on to the county issues, though, touch on your tenure on the Rice City Council, which is analogous to being on a Larchmont Village Board or Mamaroneck Town or Village Board.
So I served on the Rice City Council for 6 years, and I feel like it was fantastic training ground for stepping into county government. I actually, you know, I should take a step back for a moment. I also grew up in Westchester, so I think even when I was on the Rice City Council, I always gravitated towards the issues that were county related because you know, it's just very much a part of my identity. And so when I was on the Rice City Council, for instance, I asked to be liaison for our Playland advisory group, and you know, so got involved there when there was a bus issue that affected the community, because a bus route that really served a lot of commuters and seniors had been cut. Again, this was something that I kind of thought I could maybe take a bit of a role and get involved with. And in fact, I worked very closely with my predecessor, Judy Myers, on those issues. And Judy and I got to know one another. I think she also saw that unlike Larchmont and Mamaroneck, Rye typically has more of a Republican-leaning community, so a lot of our elected officials are Republican. On the local level, I think everybody tries to sort of row in the same direction, and I certainly felt that in order to get things done, best way to do it, you know, bring people together. You try to find the commonality more than where you have differences,
right.
And that's how you can move forward. You know, it was also important as we looked at sort of the bigger financial responsibilities for the community. I saw that really Rye, like all our communities, Mamaroneck and Larchmont, we all know that, you know, with a tax cap in place, you have to try to continue services that the community relies on. Sometimes we can do less with more, or more with less, but we certainly are challenged to provide those services and to budget responsibly. So it was good. It was really a good training ground.
And I think it's notable that in your tenure on the Rice City Council, local city taxes, which you voted on, were at zero or near zero for all 6 budgets. And that's an important thing I would say to note, in that you know, when you look at broad images, people will make judgments based on party affiliations, but the real question is, you know, how did you handle yourself in that period of time?
Right, and you know, it's interesting. We always stayed under the tax cap. We did have as I like to say, very responsible budgets that the community certainly supported, and yet there was one budget that I actually felt the prior fiscal year we had looked at our elastic revenues, things like mortgage recording tax, sales tax, and the market was really showing great strength at the time, coming back after the recession. And I had felt that we could really see a little bit of a boost to our elastic revenues that would reduce our burden to on property taxes. And in truth, I was right. The elastic revenues the year before had gone up about $1 million, but my colleagues had wanted to be very conservative in their estimates. So we kept under the tax cap. The taxes, the elastic revenue did in fact come back strong. Next year, I said, it's almost as if we have overtaxed from the previous year. We could actually keep not have a tax increase. And, that was the only time, and I didn't have my colleagues agree with me in that particular instance. So they voted for a tax increase. I actually voted against the budget because I really felt that we really had it covered from the previous year. But
well, as we move from the local governments to the county government, the perception, I guess, that most people have that don't, they have busy business lives, they have busy family lives and personal lives. They don't necessarily focus on how one level of local government functions from a different level of local government. So perhaps they grasp that it's the village or the town or the city that provides police, fire, sanitation, certain basic recreation. Now we move up to the county level, and let's talk about some of the basic functions that the county government does that the local governments don't do: roads, sewers, bus routes, things of that nature.
Absolutely. We also have a health department, which, when you think about a health department, which is going out and making inspections of our restaurants, to keep us healthy, it would be silly for all of our municipalities to try to replicate that service. It makes a lot of sense to do it on a regional level. We also have the wastewater treatment plants that are underneath the county government, county sewer lines versus, the lateral sewer lines that the municipalities are responsible for. And, there's a lot of, as I like to say, unsexy services that county government provides, but they're really essential. And certainly we know that when we are driving down county roads, we expect that those roads are going to be in good shape, and that's what our taxes we're happy to pay to have those roads taken care of.
And people don't necessarily differentiate when they're on Murray Avenue or Palmer Avenue. Oh, this is a county road versus I'm on Fenimore Road or I'm on Weaver Street, which is a state road. All of that is governmental off to the side here. They want to be able to drive on a road, and they pay good taxes, and they want to see the proper services.
Absolutely.
So you have that challenge at the county level, but that challenge for infrastructure ties into budget realities. So let's touch on your experience now in the 2 years that you've been there, the budgets. There's one coming right now, which you'll still have to deal with after the election. What's the taxation and the budget structure, and prognosticate for us what's happening at the county financially, fiscally?
Sure. So the county portion of this area's property taxes is relatively small compared to if you look at it as a pie chart. It's really down about 20%. And over the last 6 years, the tax levy's been kept flat. The truth is that we have costs that have certainly gone up significantly that are part of our responsibility: pension costs, health insurance costs. Those things have really been drivers to the expense of a lot of our county government. And, it's been challenging. I think the government has contracted from where it was 6 years ago. They had reduced the workforce about 15%. So now we're a few years down the road having this sort of reduced workforce and, trying again to keep our tax levy flat. And I have some concern that our infrastructure, as we talk about, our roads, our bridges, are maybe not being repaired and kept in as good working order as they should be. And I hear from constituents their concerns. Speaking of Murray Road, I hear from people on Murray Road and, feeling as if this is a county road, this needs to be done. We, as the Board of Legislators, we are responsible for appropriating those funds. We support those, we pass those bond acts. And then it's the implementation. The executive branch of the administration is in charge of the implementation of that. And there seems to be a real lag between the time when the money is appropriated and when those projects actually happen. So I do have some concern. We actually, last year during our budgeting, we were able to keep the tax levy flat. We did put in for a road crew, but I don't see that that's necessarily been implemented. And I think, you know, we will not see the 2016 budget until after Election Day, but I have a lot of concern that it's going to be very, very difficult to, again, maintain those same services when I'm not sure how effectively we've been doing it in recent years.
Coming out of local government, where the executive function is usually handled by an appointed manager of some sort, city manager, village administrator, town administrator. The legislative body, the council or the board of trustees, is the direct boss of the executive branch. So the legislative executive branch merges. Now you go to the county and you have two branches of government, a county executive who's very powerful and the legislative separately. Do you see that there's an opportunity for those two branches to work more closely in the future? Has it worked closely enough in the present, in your judgment?
It's interesting. You know, I think that we've had some ability to work together. I do think that there has been some opportunity to collaborate more and to communicate better to make sure that we're really moving in a direction that Westchester residents would like to see. Certainly, again, with the infrastructure issues that we were just talking about, this is an area where I do think there's a bit of a disconnect between the Board of Legislators. And by the way, you know, there are 17 legislators for Westchester County, Republicans and Democrats, and yet I would say that I suspect the legislators are all united that, again, we want to make sure that services are provided. And we all know within all our districts that there are areas that seem to be very difficult for the administration to actually implement that work. Difficult maybe by lack of political will, I don't know, but it just doesn't seem to be happening as we'd like to see. And so I think we try to keep an open line of communication, but it's been challenging.
Well, and of course it puts the burden on legislators to be advocates for their communities and basically to be the voice for Larchmont, for Mamaroneck, Rye, and also the parts of Harrison and New Rochelle that you have as well. And sometimes it involves conflict, and sometimes it involves cooperation, hopefully more cooperation. But one area that you've done terrific advocacy on is in the area of the environment. You chair the committee that has that portfolio, and you've had some victories. You want to share some of those with us? I
do, and actually that is a good example of one area where everybody came together. And I have to say, you know, this was, the proposal was, and the proposed legislation was to have an energy director in Office of Sustainability. It had been something that had been talked about in Westchester for at least 10 years. Our chairman of the board, Michael Kaplowitz, has been on the board for many, many years, and he said from the time he first came into office, this was something that, you know, kept getting introduced and then kind of, it just didn't seem to be able to maintain any traction and support, and so nothing happened. This year, last year, I started that conversation with the board and with the administration. And I tried to keep it to language that everybody could agree that this was a great path going forward. One, our energy costs at the county are extremely high. There is definitely a way working with the state government, federal government, to take advantage right now to make some changes, incorporate renewable energy into our portfolio that will reduce the tax burden. That speaks volumes to all of us who are, again, understanding about, you know, that taxpayer's dollar. We really have to be mindful and really try to spend that money wisely. So I was able to, I think, through that conversation, you talk about it in terms of really this is a good, smart business decision. And yes, it has tremendous benefits environmentally for Westchester County. The other benefit too is that with our energy director and then having the New York Power Authority to act as the back office, and they have a lot of expertise at the New York Power Authority that really they know the cutting edge technology. One of the things we wrote right into the law was that energy director then can go out to the municipalities and talk about the projects that we would be doing at the county and see if there's a way that the other municipalities can get involved, jump in, and save additional money for their own work that they want to do locally. So it just has tremendous benefit, I think, to the taxpayer on many, many levels. And the good news was that, as I say, everybody seemed to understand it and saw that this was very important for Westchester. And so we had agreement, the Democrats, the Republicans, the legislative branch, and the executive branch, and it happened.
It's a template for future decision making, I would hope.
Right, right. And you would hope in other levels of government in Washington that maybe things would work more effectively like that as well.
I wonder sometimes, because there's always a perception now that we're in the middle of a presidential race, which isn't until a year from now, but sort of, becomes the defining reality for people talking about politics, that we're looking at a battle of ideologies. And I wonder, is it really a battle of the ideologies, or is it between those who put ideology first and those who look at things in a pragmatic way? How do we solve problems, and in solving problems deal with both ideas that are both somewhat conservative and somewhat progressive, and combine them? Do you have sort of a take on that now that you've had a couple of years at the county?
So I think you're 100% right. I do think that, I'm a person, I think, driven by problem solving and trying to enact a plan to address it. That's just really, I think my mother kind of led by example on that, and I'm sort of following in that footstep. I do think that when you have people that are really focused more on the ideology and don't believe that really government is there to problem solve and really provide service and pull people together to help each other, that's a problem. I think that that certainly I'm fortunate that where I am in White Plains, for the most part, I think the people there are really the public servants, really trying to just do something that's good and beneficial for Westchester County, and that ideology, at least as far as I see, isn't as prevalent, at least on the 8th floor of county government and the legislative branch, as maybe in other areas of government.
We have a few minutes left, but let's touch on a couple of things a little more rapid fire. Playland. What's the current status of Playland? How does it look as we go forward policy-wise?
Sure. So that was a big decision this year that we were able to get a management agreement with Standard Amusements, so that starting with 2016, they will be managing the park. And in fact, they will be signing off on that management agreement at the end of this month. And they will invest $25 million of their own dollars into Playland. I think that public-private partnership model is really the way to go forward. And in addition to the $25 million, they're also going to be giving the county $300,000 annually. When they get their original investment back, there'll be a profit-sharing component. Where are we with this today? As we approach the time that they will be signing off on the agreement, I think that they've been on the ground during the summer. They've been evaluating the work that needs to get done at Playland, and also evaluating, I think, plans for the future. They do want to really do sort of a restoration of Playland, and yet at the same time introduce a couple of new features that I think will revitalize the park, bring people back in.
The housing settlement in Westchester County has been a source of great controversy, and I would argue one of those ideological issues where you have different points of view being expressed as much philosophically as in terms of the pragmatic. Bringing it back to how it affects the Sound Shore communities. We know that Mamaroneck Village and New Rochelle both long achieved any standard that they were expected to achieve. So they're not even part of the discussion. It does appear that Larchmont, Rye City, and Mamaroneck Town have all responded in a positive way. And it appears that in this area, this controversial issue really isn't much of a controversy at all. Is that a fair statement?
I think it is. First of all, I always take an opportunity when we talk about affordable housing to remind people who can actually benefit from affordable housing. You know, I know that we have in some of our communities been talking about senior affordable housing. That is certainly one component. We do have a population in Westchester County where we have more and more people 65 and over. These units are even open to people, I think, 55 and older. And I think that that's important. You know, when you stop working and your income isn't growing at the same pace as the cost of living increase, certainly there will be people that will see that affordable housing as an opportunity to stay in Westchester, stay with their families. Then I also think of college graduates. You know, those that have been in the workforce just for a few years. They're really not at their peak earning potential yet. And, you know, they may even still be living at home. And I think that millennials are, you know, that's an important group. We can look to doing some affordable housing that would certainly be beneficial to introduce people to what Westchester has for young people. And, you know, maybe then after starting with affordable housing, eventually they'll get on their feet, buy a house, and stay in Westchester. I think that there's a good model there. Also, for people that work in public safety, to have your own fire, police within the community. It's very expensive, and you know, certainly this is just another group. And I start with that because I think that unfortunately this you know, affordable housing gets this really terrible rap that it's somehow, you know, really bringing, you know, you're just going to have, you know, it's a project. It's not. It's nothing like that.
Yeah, I think sometimes that's where it's really helpful to really understand what's happening on the ground. And when I look at communities, Mamaroneck Village has embraced affordable housing in a number of different sites, and effectively so. Larchmont is working on a project now. Rye has got a couple they've done, and one that's on the books now along Theodore Frem. So to me, ideology versus pragmatism, I see a pragmatic attempt, and the County Board of Legislators as part of that, to deal with the issue on the ground level and avoid the rhetoric that seems to go, the stuff that'll get you on Fox News,
right,
but not necessarily what will solve the problem on Mamaroneck Avenue, on Larchmont Avenue, and
right,
Chatsworth Avenue. Catherine, we're just about at the end of the interview. Anything you'd like to share from your experiences? You've had, you're completing your first term up there, you're running for a second term. What's important to you as you look to the future in this position?
What I think is important to me is the same that I think is important to everybody. I think we understand that the Sound Shore is a beautiful part of Westchester to live and enjoy for children and all our families. It's something that we really, I think we value our environment, so we want to make sure we have clean water, clean air, and at the same time, I think that it's important, and I consider it absolutely paramount to my job, to make sure that, again, we are balancing the taxpayers' money with the infrastructure and maintaining that quality of service that people feel that this is why they are here in Westchester. So I want to continue doing the good work that for everyone, and certainly I look forward to another few years.
We've been talking with Catherine Parker, who is Westchester County Legislator in the 7th Legislative District. You will find her on the November ballot, Tuesday, November 3rd, on the Democratic line, the Working Families line, and the Women's Equality Party line. And we encourage you to pay attention to LMC-TV all throughout the month of October and early November, so you'll have a chance to see all of our candidates up close and personal.